You just press the space bar.
Hello and welcome to Basic Punctuation. In this video, you'll learn how to use quotation marks. Quotation marks are a set of curly hooks that are often used to surround sentences or phrases which show a person's exact words. Here is an example. My dad said, "You can do it." As you can see, the quotation marks right here are around the exact words my dad said. Another example is, she said, "I will try my best." Again, here are the quotation marks around the words that she said. Did you notice that both these sentences have a comma right before the opening quotation marks? That's another use for the comma. Right before every direct quote, in other words, right before you write what someone says, you need to place a comma. It's a rule. That's because you are pausing before you tell what the person says. My dad said, "You can do it."
Remember, a comma
She said,
means you pause when you read
"I
it.
will try my best." What is interesting is that you can write both these sentences in another way. Pay attention to what happens to the punctuation. These sentences are still showing exactly what the people are saying. Only this time, they say it first, then we learn who says it. "You can do it," said my dad. "I will try my best," she said. What happened to the punctuation in both cases?
Answer it in your head.
Yes, they are somewhat reversed. The quotation marks are still around the part that is spoken. But notice where the comma is this time. Inside the quotations, right before the closing quotation marks. The comma is actually taking the place of the period. That's because the statement isn't finished yet. It actually ends here. Things change a little more when the sentence in quotations is a question or when it's exclamatory. Here is what I mean. "Do you think you can do it?" asked my dad. "I am trying my best," she answered. This time, rather than a comma within the quotations, it ends with a question mark because the dad is asking a question. And with an exclamation mark, because she's exclaiming that she's trying really hard. Fun, isn't it? Quotation marks are indeed fun to work with. You can now have your characters speak when you write stories. Thanks for watching. Remember to keep practicing what you've learned with our fun games on Always Ice Cream and Clever.
Helper number 2, please sanitize. Okay. So, what are we learning about today? Mason? Quotation marks. So, the title of our notes is not quotation marks because we're not just learning about where to put the quotation marks. Remember, we also learned about where to put a comma and where to put end punctuation. So, the title of today's notes is Punctuation in Dialogue. Dialogue is just a fancy way to say talking. So our notes today are called Punctuation in Dialogue. And then you should also have today's date, January 13th, 2021. Girls at home, I'll spell this for you in case you can't see it. Punctuation is P-U-N-C-U-A-T-I-O-N. Dialogue is D-I-A-L-O-G-U-E. Sorry. D-I-A-L-O-G-U-E. If you see a word that ends with G-U-E, It's just a fancy way of saying the hard G sound. G. G. You will see a few words like that. I can't think of them off the top of my head, and you may not see them this year, but you will eventually see several words that end in G-U-E. Most of the time it means just it's a hard G. Dialogue. Okay. So, first things first. What should I say? Wait, sorry. Benjamin Franklin invented bifocals. My teacher said. Make sure that you are writing it exactly as it appears. Quotation marks, or quotation mark, Ben Franklin invented bifocals, comma, quotation mark, my teacher said, period. Also make sure any capital letters are also capital on your page. Yes?
Can you spell
Bifocals is spelled B-I-F-O-C-A-L-S. Yes, Victoria?
quotation marks are actually on our
Mm-hmm. Because they are the exact quotes, but I'll tell you. So, a quotation has two separate parts. It has the first part, or sometimes the second part, just depending. It has the part in quotation marks, which is called the quotation. The quotation is what the person said. It's the part in the quotation marks. Then we have the other part, in this case, my teacher said, it's not inside the quotation marks. It is the dialogue tag. Make sure you're spelling dialogue right. So the part inside quotation marks is the actual quotation. The part outside of the quotations that says who or what said it is the dialogue tag. Now we need to know, what are those things? Well, on the pink line, that's where we're starting. The quotation is what the person said. So the quotation part, the part that's in the quotation marks, is what the person said. The dialogue tag is who said it. So those are the two parts of a quotation. The actual quotation, which is what the person said, and the dialogue tag, which is who said it. I'll give you a minute to write that. Okay, so now you know what a quotation includes. It includes what the person said and who said it. Sometimes the who said it also says how they said it. Like, Ben Franklin invented bifocals, my teacher said excitedly, or something. But it doesn't have to. It just has to include the exact words that were said and who said them. Every single quotation includes a few things. first, the most important part that tells you, hey, this is what somebody said, you use quotation marks, which look like these. There's some in the front, and then there's some in the back. When you're showing your quotation mark example, put a little space between them so that you know they're not supposed to be 4 little lines all together. Use quotation marks before and after someone's exact words. Quotation marks, these little double tick marks, we can call them, go before and after someone's exact words. Only the exact words that they said. No matter where it is in a sentence, so no matter where it is in a sentence, a quotation always starts with a capital letter. So we mean this part. The part that is what the person actually said always begins with a capital letter, no matter where it is in the sentence. That means sometimes we saw in the video our dialogue tag can move. Sometimes it's at the beginning, sometimes it's at the end. The quote will always start with a capital letter. Always. No matter what. Even if the dialogue tag comes first. Like if this said, my teacher said, Ben Franklin invented bifocals. Well, Ben Franklin would be capitalized because it's proper. But if I said, my teacher said, one of the founding fathers invented bifocals, then the O in one would be capitalized because it's what the teacher actually said. It's like a new sentence within a longer sentence. So the quotation part always starts with a capital letter, and we'll see some examples of that when we talk about the changes in where the dialogue tag is. So this is what you need to know about all quotations. They have these little marks, the quotation marks, around what the person actually said. They always start with a capital letter. Now let's talk about how to punctuate it depending on where the dialogue tag is. Okay, so again, we're still at the pink line. We're at the pink line for all of these. But after this, what I put right here, we're going to move over a little bit from the pink line with a bullet point, a dot. So, sometimes the dialogue tag comes after the quote. So sometimes that means, like our example, the quotation comes first, then the dialogue tag comes after. So the quotation, Ben Franklin invented bifocals. My teacher said. The dialogue tag is at the end. If this happens, so put a little space between the pink line and your little dot, that's called a bullet point, to show that this fits with this statement. It's extra information that goes with this one. Put the comma after, actually not the comma, let's say put a comma. Put a comma after the last word of the quote before the quotation mark. So if the dialogue tag comes after the quote, like in our example, where my teacher said is after Ben Franklin invented bifocals. You put a comma after the last word of the quote before the quotation mark, so it goes between. Look at the example we wrote earlier. I'm going to write the end of it, but you don't have to write this because you already have it. You can see the comma is after the last word of the quote, bifocals, but before the quotation marks. It comes between. So the comma does not go on the other side of the quotation marks. It goes between. Then we have our dialogue tag. Does everybody see that? Circle that comma in the example we gave. Remember, you do not have to write this because you already have it. So if you were writing this, you're wasting time because you already had it. So go to your quote at the top and circle that comma. You can draw a little arrow from that circled comma around your work to this little sentence that we just said.
Ready.
Now go over a little bit more and put a dash. I don't know what the official name for that is. I don't know if it has an official name other than a dash. I don't know. In note taking. You don't know what it is.
I know.
Okay. It's not the same as that.
No, I was going to say for that to log up there.
Okay. Well, is that important right now? Do we need to worry about it right now? No. Okay. You do not do this unless the quote is a question. Wait, erase that. I don't like that. That's going to be confusing. If the quote, that's short for quotation, oh, whatever, I'll just write quotation around right there. If the quote is a question or an exclamation, remember an exclamation is something that is said with excitement. So if the quote is a question or exclamation, replace the comma with a question mark if it's a question, or an exclamation point if it's an exclamation. So if it's a question or an exclamation, instead of a comma being between the last word, I'm going to write that again just so that you see. Or should I do an example? Let's do an example so you can actually see it. So for example, I have my quotation marks. is it? Asked Kingston. That's a question, right? What time is it is a question. So if we follow the rules, this quotation is a question. So we replace the comma that we would normally put with a question mark. Same thing if it's an exclamation, like, "Watch out!" Aaron yelled. Instead of saying "watch out, comma," quotation mark, Aaron yelled, we would say quotation mark, "watch out," exclamation point, quotation mark, Aaron yelled, period. So, unless the quote is a question or an exclamation point, a comma goes after the last word of the quote and before the last quotation mark. If the dialogue tag comes after the quote, so we're going back to this, line it up with this bullet point because it's still about this. The dialogue tag, a period, goes after the dialogue tag. So the dialogue tag, this is when the dialogue tag is at the end of the sentence after the quote. A period goes after the dialogue tag. You're ending the sentence. Usually with a quote, it's two sentences put into one. The quote and then who said it is all two things going into one. So a period goes after the dialogue tag. A comma means, hey, it's continuing, like in our first example, because we have to say who said it. Is "my teacher said" a complete sentence? Think about it. My teacher said. Is that a complete sentence? No. My teacher said what? We don't know. But if it's Ben Franklin invented bifocals, my teacher said, that is a complete sentence. We know what she said. So that's why a period goes at the end. Okay, take a minute to make sure you have all that. And then we'll talk about what happens when the dialogue tag comes first. Go back to the pink line because we're talking about something completely different. Sometimes the dialogue tag, that means who said it, comes before the quotation. So I'm going to rewrite our example here. Oops, I wrote quotient. That's not a word. Quotation. So I'm going to rewrite our quote from the beginning, but I'm going to put the dialogue tag first. For example, my teacher said Ben Franklin invented bifocals. This time the dialogue tag's first. We learn who said it before we learn what they said. My teacher said, well, that's who said it. Ben Franklin invented bifocals. That's what she said. go over a little bit, maybe underneath where your example starts, and do your bullet point. The comma goes after the last word of the dialogue tag. So it goes after the last word of the dialogue tag. My teacher said, the last word is said, but before the quotation mark. So you see we've got our comma, circle our comma. It is after the last word of the dialogue tag, but before the quotation mark. We would never, a comma, remember, it always goes at the end of a word. We learn this with conjunctions. A comma never comes at the beginning of the word. Like we always have this. You don't have to write this. Wait. Let's do, pretend we have items in a series. The second to last item is apples, and the last item is pears. So we bought oranges, apples, and pears. We know the comma goes after apples, not before and. Remember, commas never go, see this looks wrong to a lot of you. You're like, well, that doesn't look right. Because you know, commas never go at the beginning of a word. It doesn't look right. Once you've learned commas, this just doesn't look right. Commas go at the end of a word. If we put this comma after the quotation mark, it would be at the beginning of Ben. Can we have a comma at the beginning of a word no matter what it is? No. So we put, when the dialogue tag comes first, we put a comma after the last word of the dialogue tag, in this case said, but before the quotation mark. Now we only have one more thing to talk about because, well, what about end punctuation when the dialogue tag comes first? It's a lot easier. So, when we don't have to worry about question mark or exclamation points replacing a comma, because would we ever put end punctuation right here? Does the sentence end or does it keep going? When the dialogue tag comes first like this, is the sentence ending here? No, it's continuing. So we don't have to worry about replacing it with a question mark or an exclamation point. So it's a little easier when the dialogue tag comes first. Because end punctuation, that means a period, a question mark, or an exclamation point. Any one of those three things, we know those are our three end punctuations. So end punctuation, no matter what it is, whether it's just a statement or a command, a question, or an exclamation, end punctuation goes after the last word of the quotation. But before the quotation mark. So if the dialogue tag comes first, like in this example, my teacher said Ben Franklin invented bifocals, the end punctuation, doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a period, a question mark, or an exclamation point, goes after the last word of the quote, whatever it is, but before the quotation mark. So we see that here. We know Ben Franklin invented bifocals is just a statement, right? It's definitely not a question. It's not really something that we would say with excitement. It's just a statement. It is what it is. So we end with a period. The period goes at the end of after the last word of the quotation. The last word of the quotation is bifocal, so we have our period, but before the quotation marks. So do you see how our end punctuation is between the last word bifocals and the quotation mark? Whether it's a question, an exclamation, or a statement or command. The end punctuation, if the dialogue tag comes first, will always go between the last word of the quote and the quotation mark. So as you're doing your independent practice, as we're doing our guided practice, and you're answering the questions, and then as you're doing your independent practice on your own, make sure that you are paying close attention to where the dialogue tag is, because it changes the punctuation, right? What does not change? What's the one thing that does not change no matter where the dialogue tag is? Look at your notes. What doesn't change no matter where the dialogue tag is? Kingston? Well, not the quotation marks, yes, but there's one more thing. The quotation marks will always go around the quote, no matter where it is. It'll never go around the dialogue tag. One more thing about the quote. Colin? Bobby?
The period and the quotation mark and exclamation mark.
No, because the periods change places. If the dialogue tag comes last, the period goes at the end of the dialogue tag. If the dialogue tag comes first, do we have a period at the end of the dialogue tag? No, so that does change. What doesn't change? Look at your notes. Would you look under, sometimes the dialogue tag comes before the quotation, or sometimes the dialogue tag comes after the quotation? That's only telling you what's different about them. So where should you look to see what's the same no matter what? Smith?
In your notes.
Well, but where in your notes?
At the beginning.
At the beginning, because remember at the beginning I said things that were the same no matter what. And we know the same no matter what. Well, the quote goes in quotation marks, the exact words. But what else is the same no matter what? Zadie?
The dialogue tag is who said it.
Nope, that's not what I'm looking for. That's just the definition. Not what's the same about them. That's just the definition of a dialogue tag. And a quotation being what somebody said is just the definition. Quotation marks being around what somebody said is something that's the same. But there's one more thing that's the same. Aaron?
No matter where it is.
Loudly.
No matter where is the sentence. Quotation. The quotation always starts with capital letters.
There you go. No matter where, everybody find that in your notes. It's right there. You all had it. No matter where it is in the sentence, the quotation always starts with a capital letter. Doesn't matter if the dialogue tag comes first or last, the quotation will always start with a capital letter. So, you don't have to write this, but look at this. Before I said, what did I say? What time is it? Kingston said. Well, if I say, Kingston said is it? Well, is what a proper noun? Is what a proper noun or proper anything? No, it's not. We're not starting a sentence, so usually we wouldn't put a capital letter if we're not starting a sentence. But remember, no matter where the quote is, it always starts with a what? No matter where the quote is, it always starts with a what? Come on, guys. Somebody just said this, and I repeated it, and we said it a bunch of times. So if you're having to look back now, that means you weren't listening when we were talking about it a minute ago. Carla, what does a quotation mark always start with, no matter where it is in a sentence?
We always start with a capital letter.
Carla, we can't really hear you.
It starts with a capital letter.
It always starts with a capital letter. So even though the word what is not proper, it's going to start with a capital letter. Kingston said, what time is it? Yes, quickly.
That's very accurate to what I actually say.
You do ask that a lot. So it kind of worked out that I picked your stick. Okay. So now, make sure that you have used your notes. Make sure you have all of this copied down. Girls at home, go ahead. So, we should always start by reading the box at the top. Whatever, we're going to ignore it. Read the first sentence at the top of the page. Zadie, loud and slow.
Use quotation marks around the exact words someone says when they are speaking.
Okay, thank you. Zari, read the next sentence.
If the dialogue tag comes at the beginning of the sentence, include a comma before the quotation.
There you go. So we see an example where our dialogue tag comes first. Avery said, comma, quotation mark, look at that giant tree, period. Quotation mark. And notice the first word of the quote is capitalized, even though it's not the very first word of the sentence. Read the next sentence. Ethan.
Example.
We already read the example. Loudly.
The dialogue tag comes at the end of the sentence. Use a comma instead of a period to end this quotation.
So, if the dialogue tag comes at the end of the sentence, use a comma instead of a period to end it. That means, I am very tired right now, comma, William said as he yawned. We have a period at the end of our sentence. Does everybody see that? Remember, no matter what, there's going to be a period. It just depends on where the comma goes. The period will always go at the end, whether it's the end of the quotation or the end of the dialogue tag. The comma always comes in the middle. Zadie, will you make sure that door's closed? Okay. Where, if the period is after the quotation, is it before or after the quotation mark? If the period or the question mark or the exclamation is at the end of the quotation, does it go before or after the quotation mark? Come on, guys, you all know this. You can literally see it right here. Cullen?
Before.
Before. Before the quotation mark. So, now what we're going to do, we're going to rewrite each sentence, and we're going to add quotation marks and commas where they are needed. So, number 1, I can't find my keys anywhere, Owen whined. Carla, does the dialogue tag come before or after the quote?
I can hear what you say.
Does the dialogue, okay, I don't know why your headphones weren't on this whole time. Could you not hear anything I've been saying? Okay. Carla, if you couldn't hear, that means you needed to put your headphones on a long time ago. Carla, I'm going to ask it again, but you were sitting there, so that makes me think you couldn't hear this whole time. You were just copying what I had, but not listening to what I had to say about it. That's not good. Just copying something does not teach you anything. You have to hear why you're copying it. I'm a little frustrated right now, Carla. I'm going to say it again. Look at number 1. Does the dialogue tag come before or after the quotation?
It comes behind the quotient.
Quotation. It comes after the quotation. Which means we start our sentence with a quotation mark because the quotation comes first. Now, I'm going to write the quote. I'm going to write what Owen whined. I can't find my keys anywhere. You have it right there, but stop after anywhere. What comes next, Carla? We finished the quote. The quote is done. We have the dialogue tag left to write. What comes next after the word anywhere?
Owen whined.
I can't hear you. Well, we can't just write that. Then we just have the same exact thing that's already there, but it's wrong what we have. So we have to fix it. How do we fix it? What comes after anywhere so that it's written correctly? What's the first thing that comes after anywhere? We have our quotation first. Is the sentence over?
No.
So can we put end punctuation, like a period?
No.
No. So what do we need to say, hey, the quote is over, but the sentence isn't? What's the first thing that we need?
The end of the quotation mark.
Can somebody help her out? What is the first thing that we need to end this quote? There's 2 things we need before we can get to the dialogue tag. Look at your notes. Find the notes that say what to do when the dialogue tag comes after the quotation. What do we need to put after the word anywhere? Kingston. A comma, because the sentence isn't over yet. We have the dialogue tag coming next. And then the other quotation mark. Does everybody understand why we did that? Find in your notes. Point to the part of your notes that tells you why we put a comma and then another quotation mark. Point to the part of your notes with your pencil or your finger. I'm going to come around and check. Pretend like... Colin, number 2. Diego yelled, I'm on my way down. Where is the dialogue tag?
Before.
Before the what?
The quotient.
Not quotient, quotation.
The quotation.
Before the quotation. So do we start with quotation marks like we did in number 1?
No.
No, because is the dialogue tag what the person actually said?
No.
No. We only put the exact words that someone says in quotations. So we just start with the dialogue tag. What's the dialogue tag in this sentence?
Diego yelled.
Diego yelled. Now, what comes next?
The quotation.
The quotation, nothing else? Look at your notes. Everybody find the part of your notes that says sometimes the dialogue tag comes before the quotation. Find the part of your notes, point to it. Now look at what it says underneath. Sometimes the dialogue tag comes before the quotation. Cullen, what do we have to put next? Do we go straight to the quotation marks?
No.
No. What do we need first?
A comma.
A comma. Remember, we always separate the quotation and the dialogue tag with a comma. It just depends on which one comes first, where it is. Is it before or after quotation marks? If the dialogue tag comes first, it is before quotation marks. If the dialogue tag comes last, it is after the quotation marks. Wait, I guess I said that wrong. But if the dialogue tag comes first, we put a comma after the dialogue tag, and then we put what?
Quotation.
Then we put quotation marks. What do we have to make sure the first letter of the quote always is?
Capital.
Capital. This already has it capital. So, what comes next?
I'm on my way down.
I'm on my way down. Oops. Are we done?
No.
No. What do we need? Look at what I have, and what do we need?
Quotation mark.
Just quotation marks?
And a period.
Where do they go? Do I put the quotation marks first, then the period? What order do they go in? Look at your notes. It's in the same section. Everybody should be looking in their notes for this answer, because what if I pick a stick and say, hey, I picked this stick, you have to answer. We're not moving on until you answer. So everybody should be looking for this answer. What comes next? Tell me the correct order.
The period goes first, then the quotation marks.
He yelled it. Do you think he's just like, I'm on my way down? Do you think we need a period?
No.
What do you think maybe we need instead?
An exclamation mark.
An exclamation point. Does an exclamation point make it come after the quotation marks? Read your notes. Which note tells you exactly where to put the end punctuation when the dialogue tag comes first? You're going to find it. You're going to read it to me. Once that person has read it to me, if you have not found it yet, you're going to find it. Smith, what sentence in your notes tells you exactly where to put end punctuation when the dialogue tag comes first?
And punctuation goes after the last word of the quotation, but before the quotation mark.
Is that in the same section as where we figured out about this comma?
Yes.
Yes. It's the next bullet point after the one about the comma. First it tells us the comma goes after the dialogue tag, before the quotations, and then the next bullet point tells us end punctuation. No matter what it is, we wrote examples, period, exclamation point, question mark, comes before the quotation marks. Okay, number 3, Mason. We have, I am sorry I broke your lamp, Chris mumbled. Does the dialogue tag come before the quotation or after the quotation? Look at your notes. What is a dialogue tag? What is a dialogue tag? The beginning of your notes tells you what a quotation is and what a dialogue tag is. So look at the beginning of your notes. Find what a dialogue tag is. It says a dialogue tag is, or a dialogue tag tells you. I don't remember what format I put it in. Zari, can you help him out? What is a dialogue tag?
The dialogue tag is who said it.
The dialogue tag is who said it. Where did you find that in your notes, Zari?
It's after the second, it's on the second one on the first one. But, well, the quotations is what the person's
So is it at the beginning or the end of your notes?
beginning.
Beginning. It's one of the first things we wrote about. We said the dialogue tag tells who said it. We also have an example in our very first quote. We underlined, my teacher said. So Mason, look at this sentence. I am sorry I broke your lamp, Chris mumbled. The dialogue tag tells us who said it. So does the dialogue tag come first or last in number 3? Last. So that means we have to start our rewrite with what? If the quote comes first, we have to start our rewrite with what? Quotation marks. We always make sure the first letter of the quotation is what, Mason? Capitalized. This one's already capitalized, so we can copy it the same way, but we have our quotations, and then we write what? We write the quotation, which is what? Tell us what it says. This looks like all one sentence to me. What is, pick out the part of that sentence that is the quotation.
I'm sorry I broke your lamp.
I am sorry I broke your lamp. So I'm going to write, I am sorry I broke your lamp, then I'm going to stop. Now, I'm done writing the quotation, but I'm not done writing my sentence. Carla, are you focusing right now? You need to sit up. Did you write, I am sorry I broke your lamp? And you have a quotation at the beginning. You need to sit up and be with us. Okay, Mason, what comes next? We're not done. We still have words left that we haven't written. We just finished writing the quotation. What do we need next?
Another quotation.
Do we just go right into the other quotation marks?
No.
We always have some kind of punctuation before the end quotation mark. We see it here. We see it here. We see it here. We see it here. The quotation comes first. So what punctuation mark do we need before the end quotation marks? Does the sentence end here? So what do we need to say, hey, we're starting a new thought, but our sentence isn't ending yet? Michaela, can you help him out? A comma. Mason, look, you can see that here. Here's an example where the quotation comes before the dialogue tag. I can't find my keys anywhere, comma, Owen whined. We can also see it here at the top of the page. Quotations, I am very tired right now, comma, quotation, William said as he yawned. So we have examples right on our page that tell us, okay, our quotation comes first. Every single time our quotation comes first in our notes, on our page, in the examples we already did, what comes before the end punctuation mark? What comes before the end quotation mark? Mason, look in those three places that I just showed you. Look at the top of the page. You can look up here to see where I'm pointing so that you're looking at the same place on your paper. Or you can choose to do whatever you want and stay confused. Who can help him out? Who can help him out? What comes before the end quotation mark in every single example where the quotation comes first? Michaela? What punctuation mark? I said, what punctuation mark comes before every end quotation mark when the quote comes first? If you answer punctuation, that doesn't answer the question. I know it's punctuation. That's why I said, which punctuation mark? Aaron? A comma. A comma always comes before the end quotation mark if the quote comes first. Do you see that? The quote came first. We have a comma before the end punctuation mark. In number 1, the quote came first. We have a comma before the end quotation marks. The quote came first, so we have a comma before what, Mason? Before the end quotation mark. Now, is our sentence done? No. What do we need next? Chris mumbled. Chris is a name, so we capitalize his name. Okay, we're at the end of our sentence, so what do we need next, Mason? A period. We just finished the dialogue tag. Do we need any more quotation marks? No. Quotation marks only go around the exact words that the person used. Do you think this person said their name and how they said it? Would they do that? When you tell somebody something, so right now I'm saying, Victoria, you're going to do number 4, Miss Folis said. Do I say that? Is that how we talk? So is the dialogue tag ever going to be someone's exact words? No. Do we put quotations around things that are not someone's exact words? Do we put quotations around around something that is not someone's exact words? How do you know that? Sorry?
Because when it stops, it would have like she said or
I
she
need an
complained.
exact reason that you know 100% the answer to that question I just asked. Would we put quotation marks around something that is not someone's exact words? Look in your notes and find something that tells you the answer to that question. Think about where it would be. Would it be at the very beginning? Would that answer be under sometimes the dialogue tag comes before the quotations? Would it be in the section that says sometimes the dialogue tag comes after the quotation? Zari?
It says use quotation marks before and after someone's exact words.
Use quotation marks before and after someone's exact words. The dialogue tag is not someone's exact words. So would we ever put it in quotation marks? Some of you are still like, what? Because you're not listening to what people are saying. You're just going, what? I don't get this. This doesn't make sense. I can't even hear what anybody is saying because I'm just thinking this is too hard. This is dumb. I don't like this. Stop telling yourself negative thoughts and listen to what people say, and you won't be confused anymore. Correct. Zari is right. We never put the dialogue tag in quotation marks because they are not someone's exact words. Find the sentence in your notes that says use quotation marks at the beginning and the end of someone's exact word. Find that in your notes. Where did you find it, Zari? For those that are still struggling to find it because they continue to look in the wrong spot.
At the beginning.
At the beginning. Is the dialogue tag someone's exact words? Aaron?
No.
How do you know that? Can't hear you.
I know that because
Tell me exact word for word how you know that. You don't have to say it in your own words. You can use my words. You have them somewhere. How do we know that the dialogue tag is not someone's exact words? Zadie.
Because in our notes we said the dialogue tag is who said it.
The dialogue tag is who said it. I wouldn't say something and then tell you that I said it. That's not how we talk. So the dialogue tag does not go in quotation. So Mason, do we put a quotation mark at the end of this dialogue tag? No. Okay, number 4, Victoria. Isabella said, "This is the best book I've ever read." Does the dialogue tag come before or after the quote? I can't hear you. Before. So what do we start this sentence with?
we start this sentence with the dialogue.
We start with the dialogue tag, not quotations, like in numbers 1 and 3, but the dialogue tag, like in number 2. What is the dialogue tag?
Isabella said.
Isabella said. The dialogue tag comes before the quotation, so what comes next? A comma. What will always go between the dialogue tag and the quotation? Doesn't matter what order they're in. It's always going to go in the middle. Zadie?
A comma.
A comma. But we have to figure out, do we put it before or after the quotation marks? Well, the dialogue tag is first. So do we put the comma before or after the quotation marks, Victoria? We put it before. What comes next? I can't hear you.
We put the quotation.
We put the quotation marks. What comes next?
What comes next is, this is the best book I ever read.
This is the best book I've ever read. Now we're starting a quote. So what does a quote always start with? A quote always starts with a capital letter. Luckily, they already did that. So is punctuation something we're correcting on this page? No, it's actually a hint you can use. Because if you have a random capital in the middle of a sentence, like here, what does that probably mean came first? Zadie?
The dialogue.
The dialogue tag. There's a little hint for you. Okay, so we make sure that the first word of the quote is capitalized. This has a capital T. And then we write the rest of the quote, which Victoria told us is, this is the best book I've ever read. This is the best book I've ever read. Okay, Victoria, what comes next? That would be a fragment because we'd be missing something. Every single complete sentence must have.
I catch what I said.
Caught what I said.
We need the punctuation.
What kind of punctuation mark? Quotation marks are a punctuation mark. Commas are a punctuation mark. Periods, parentheses, semicolons, colons, those are all examples of punctuation marks. Which one do we need here?
An exclamation point.
We could put an exclamation point. We could also put a period. We could put either one. It's just how you would like to say this. They put a period, but I feel like this is something that you would say with excitement.
This is
So Victoria first said an exclamation point. Now what?
now we put quotation.
Now we put the quotation marks. A period, question mark, an exclamation point would never go after the quotation mark. We would never put quotation mark period or a quotation mark exclamation point or a quotation mark question. No matter what, we would not do that if we're showing dialogue. Okay. Now, we're just going to skip science today because we kind of have an extra day anyway, so it's not a big deal and we don't have enough time. Well, no, you know what? We'll start it. No. I don't know. Maybe we'll do like a teeny bit at the end, but right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 15 minutes to do this, to do numbers 7 through 10 on your own. I will do number 7 with whoever needs a little more help. If you are good, you may go ahead. Please be careful. Please go slow. Please be thorough. Zari, yes.
The back starts with 5.
Oh, sorry, 5. Sorry, 5 through 10, not 7 through 10. Smith, was that what you wanted to say too? And Mason, was that what you were going to say? Sorry, it starts with 5, so do 5 through 10 on your own. I'm going to do number 5 with anybody who wants a little more practice. If you are good, you may go ahead. Please make sure you're actually good. If you have no questions, you've got it, you understand. Keep going. If you're a little bit like, I think I need a little more practice, do it with me.
That's why I went like that.